Who should be number one in the basketball polls? Is it Auburn or is it Alabama? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. In today's show, we talk a little basketball. Hot weekend of action in SEC hoops. And by the way, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. We'll also talk a little football later. We'll be joined by former Vandy player and NFL veteran defensive end Stephen Weatherly as we caught up with him in New Orleans. But first, it was a heck of an SEC basketball weekend. Mississippi State got a 1-point win over Georgia. Kentucky beat up on South Carolina. Tennessee rolled Oklahoma. Texas A&M got a huge 3-point win on the road at Mizzou. But the two most intriguing games of the weekend. Number 3, Alabama survives a scare from an improving Arkansas team winning on the road in Fayetteville. The Tide get the 85-81 win. And number 6, Florida went on the road and got one of the biggest wins of the year, beating number 1 Auburn at Neville Arena 90-81. And with that, number 2 Duke also fell at Clemson. So the big question now, who should be number 1 in the polls? Our buddy Zac Blackerby, he hosts Locked On Auburn. He joins us. And Zac, go ahead, man. Let's make a case. Why should Auburn stay at number 1 in the polls?
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask me who should be number 1, Auburn or Alabama. It's like, wonder what I'm going to say. But I still think, regardless of Auburn's loss, and Auburn had a terrible showing against Florida, and Florida's a good team. I don't want to take anything away from Florida. They should be ranked top 5. They are a top 5 team in college basketball. But Auburn still has the best resume in college basketball. The most quad 1 wins by a considerable margin, the toughest schedule in college basketball, and they sit still atop the country, in my opinion. You know, that 20-2 record, and your 2 losses are Duke, who would have been number 1 later today if they had taken care of business at Clemson. That didn't happen. And then, obviously, Florida. 2 elite teams, 2 teams that are definitely contenders to make the Elite Eight in the Final Four, and heck, even potentially a national championship. So Auburn has the most quality wins of any team in college basketball. Then their 2 losses, I think, are extremely excusable. Auburn still has the best resume in college basketball. They're number 1 in KenPom. So we'll see. We'll see how the voters. It seems to change, Gordy, from week to week what the criteria is for some of these voters, as well as the brand associated with it. I think Duke gets more of a pass than other schools. I think Kansas gets a pass more than other schools. Kentucky gets a pass more than other schools. We'll see how Auburn and Alabama are treated when polls drop later today.
Yeah, just for the resumes, you got 21-2 Auburn, who's now 9-1 in the SEC. They take their first conference loss. 20-3 Duke, who is 12-1 in the ACC. They take their first loss in conference. And Alabama is 20-3, so they got the one additional non-conference loss, but they're an identical 9-1 in the SEC. And these two have not played head-to-head yet. So again, it's kind
coming.
It's kind of pick your flavor, but like. Again, I saw a lot of Auburn and Alabama fans the last 24 hours going at each other, and there were a lot of Auburn fans saying, look, forget living in the moment of what just happened. Take that, but then take a step back and let's look at the whole year. And Auburn consistently has been the best team in the country.
Yeah, and some pollsters are going to vote differently than others. Some are going to be in the moment, and that's fine, and some aren't. Some of them just copy KenPom, which I guess is fine. Whatever. Do you need a vote if you're just going to copy KenPom? I don't know, but that's a conversation for another day. The beauty of all of this, Gordy, is they're going to get to hash this out on the court in a week. I mean, that's the beauty of all of this. And one of the teams is probably going to be number 1, and the other one's probably going to be number 2 in Tuscaloosa. Right. And just the fact that there's a strong argument, a very strong argument for both of these teams, and they get to play this Saturday in Tuscaloosa. I mean, this is a major win for college basketball. It's a major win for the SEC. And there is a developing major sense of pride throughout the state of Alabama right now. I mean, heck, I don't think either fan base is happy with how their football season's just turned out. So all the focus, all the pride turns to basketball. And these two teams get to play twice. Obviously, they play Saturday, and then they play the last game of the regular season, Gordy. And I said it throughout the last few weeks. The winner of that game that might be the SEC championship game when it's all said and done, which is electric as it could possibly get.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. And, look, as we look kind of ahead, I want to look back really quick, but give me a quick primer on Saturday. What went wrong for Auburn? It kind of felt like missed free throws kind of killed them.
Yeah, missed free throws. Florida played a great game. Once again, like, it's easy to come out and say Auburn didn't play their best game, which is true, but also, like, Florida lived up to the moment. I mean, this was a number 1 versus number 6 matchup, and Florida said, hey, we want this more. We don't care that we're in Neville. We don't care, how good Auburn is historically. We want this. And they wanted it more. I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, Janai Broome didn't look like the player of the year that he has looked in pretty much every game so far this year, and his stats were still fine. He made a 3 late that really made his stats look a lot better than they actually were, in my opinion. But even like the camera was zooming in on him on the sideline, it just didn't seem like he wanted to be there. And you still had guys like Miles Kelly. He scored over 20. I mean, he was electric, but it didn't feel right. And how much of that was Auburn? How much of that is what Florida did? Florida was physical. They made threes. They did everything that you're supposed to do in a big game, and Auburn didn't.
Yeah, and Florida's a top team too. I mean, so you have to tip your cap and say, it's a good loss if you're going to have a loss, but it was.
There's like two sides of the coin. I was talking about this with Daryl Dapprich. He and I go live together on Locked On Auburn after every Auburn basketball game, if y'all are interested in that. But we were kind of watching the last few minutes of the game before we went live, and it's like there's two sides of this coin. Like, if you're going to lose a game, like from a resume standpoint, this one doesn't look bad. I mean, your 2 losses are Duke and Florida. But on the other side of it is like, these are the games you want to win. These are the games you want to win. You don't get to host too many top 10 matchups at home. Auburn got to do that against Tennessee a few weeks ago, and they won in a brutal game. And then they lost to Florida. So they'll get to host another top 10 matchup, we all assume, later this year when Alabama comes to Auburn. So it's just, you don't get that opportunity too often. So while it's like, this is an okay one to lose, if you're going to lose one from a resume standpoint, you still would much rather add another quality win to your resume.
Yeah, and if you're Auburn, what you want to avoid also is a slide. Okay, you take your first SEC loss, you bounce back and you're okay. But this week, Zach, you got to go to Vandy.
Tricky. That's a tricky opponent now.
They just beat Texas. They beat Kentucky a week ago. And then an epic game, like we said, at Coleman Coliseum. I mean, if you don't take care of business at Vandy, you could suddenly be staring down the hole of a 3-game losing streak.
100%. And it's going to be a little tough to not look ahead to Alabama because there's so much pressure on both of these teams. It's going to be easy to not look at Vandy. So, well, you're absolutely right, Gordy. You can't let this turn into a 3-game losing streak. You've got to find a way to win in Nashville on Tuesday. And so we'll definitely see what Bruce Pearl and these Tigers have in store for the Commodores later this week.
And you mentioned, after this trip to Coleman, you finished the regular season at Neville Arena hosting Alabama. And by the way, Auburn's final 4 games of the regular season are home for Ole Miss, at Kentucky, at A&M, home for Bama. All currently top 25 opponents.
Brutal, yeah.
So I ask you this in closing, Zach, will Auburn win the SEC?
Yes. I think Auburn wins the SEC, and I think they split with Bama. I think Auburn loses in Tuscaloosa, and then I think they win against Alabama at Neville, and that game acts as the regular season SEC championship.
It's going to be a lot of fun, man. It's overall, how much have you enjoyed this season of SEC basketball so far? I mean,
it's been incredible.
We're starting to get a little bit of a separation on who's the contenders and who's the pretenders, but I think way more contenders than maybe we even thought at the start of the year.
Yeah, and going into the weekend, I mean, there was a major log jam of kind of that second tier. Like, you had Auburn, you had Bama 1 game back. Now they're obviously tied, but then you had this log jam of teams with 6 wins, and they were all just so good. And so Saturday, we talked about this last week on Locked On Auburn, that Saturday would kind of be, I think it would tell us who a lot of teams are. And I don't know if it actually did in hindsight now, but we'll see. We'll see obviously more as the season goes on. But it's been so fun, Gordy, and it's the best the SEC's ever been, and to cover a team and pull for a team that has been the best in college basketball every step of the way up to this point. It's been super fun. And Janai Broome, I mean, just of one of the most pleasant surprises in all of my sports fandom ever. So yeah, it's been a blast.
If you could trade him for Cooper Flag, would you?
No.
Okay.
No. This isn't the NBA.
I know. We're for voting best player in college basketball, I have to ask, would you swap them? So, no, you're right, too. And how about win streaks, too? I mean, we're talking about Tennessee on a 3-game win streak now.
Yeah.
A&M's on a 3-game win streak. Florida's won 2 in a row. Ole Miss has won 2 in a row. And by the way, Mizzou won a loss for them against A&M. Buzz Williams, big feather in A&M's cap. They're sitting strong as a top 10 team. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. You got a prediction on how many teams the SEC will get in the tournament?
Oh, goodness. The most ever for sure. I mean, there's an argument for all but maybe 4 teams right now, especially if they go on a run, because every win you pick up at this point of the year, odds are it's a quality win. Even if it's not quad 1, it's quad 2, depending on if they're home or away. But gosh, I mean, we may be pushing double figures here, which is super, super fun.
He is Zac Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn. And Zach, always appreciate the time, man.
Hey, thanks, guys.
All right, we'll be right back right after this. More to come here on Locked On SEC. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Look, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Go check them out. It is FanDuel. They got everything up there you need, including all the SEC hoops action. Right now, new FanDuel customers, if you've never bet with them before, you can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. They're the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. And we caught up with some great guests down in New Orleans on Radio Row, and some scheduled guests and some guests that just kind of happened to stop by. One guy who happened to be walking by was Stephen Weatherly, former defensive end for the Vanderbilt Commodores. If you remember, played with them back in 2013, 2014, 2015. Was a big-time player there under James Franklin and had some great success. 3.5 sacks his freshman year, 4.5 sacks the next year, 3.5 sacks the next year, and ends up going off to the NFL. Was a late-round pick, a 7th-round pick in 2016. Would go on to play several years for the Minnesota Vikings, the Carolina Panthers, Broncos, Browns, before calling it a career following the 2022 season. And as we're chatting with him, he was telling us what a big Vanderbilt football fan he still is. And obviously they went through some lean years there, and it was tough being a Vanderbilt fan, but he talked to us about how passionate he is about Coach Clark Lee and the job that he's doing, and really thinks that Vanderbilt is knocking on the door, ready to take that next step this year. Of course, getting Diego Pavia back is going to be a big piece, but Vanderbilt was a thorn in the side for a lot of teams last year. And the question is, can they do that again this year? And Clark Lee looking to build off of this success in 2024 and carried into 2025. So without further ado, figured we let you guys hear a little bit of our conversation with former Vanderbilt defensive player, Stephen Weatherly. We're along here from Super Bowl Radio Row, and always fun to catch up with former players, current players, all kinds of different guys you see here. And I looked over and I said, is that Stephen Weatherly walking around here, former Vanderbilt Commodore? And so appreciate you taking some time, man. How are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here. Ecstatic to be a Vanderbilt Commodore as of late after they took down Bama. Needed it. Absolutely.
Let's talk about it, because we're talking going into last year. I'm like, Clark Lee, man, you go from you upset Kentucky and Florida 2 years ago to then you don't win a conference game again last year. And I'm like, I don't know if this thing's ever going to get itself figured out. And then I had a buddy telling me the people he's bringing in from New Mexico State, Tim Beck and Jerry Kill, and this Diego Pavia, didn't even know how to say his name, is coming in with him. It completely changed the culture of Vanderbilt football.
Absolutely. Clark Lee went out and found himself a winner there are these types of quarterbacks out there. There are game managers, that people like to talk about, game breakers that can take it over. And then there are fighters. There are just scrappy quarterbacks. You can never count them out because if you give them just a sliver of hope, they will shred you. And one of those great quarterbacks in the league is Baker Mayfield, right? If you look at his frame and all that stuff, nothing really stands out. But his ability to put the ball where it needs to be and, more importantly, motivate the men around him to bring the best out of them makes him a dangerous threat week in and week out, no matter when it is. And so once you have that type of dog at that key position who's willing to put his body on the line, run the read option, put himself out there, feed the people who need to be fed, Bama experienced it.
Yeah. I mean, he's I don't know, he's not Manziel. Like, I guess he's Manziel-like because he's smaller, but, like, he'll run you over like Tebow. Like, I don't even know what category to put Pavia in, but that dude he'll put his body on the line. It's insane.
Get up and keep going. And I love that because I feel like a handful of guys, at least at that age, are thinking about the next level. Like, which hit could be the hit that could mess me up?
Yeah.
Diego's not thinking like that at all. And then because of that, it makes the guys around him be like, if my quarterback is willing to do that, I got to step it up.
So where were you? Take me back. Where were you when the Bama game happened?
I was at home.
Watching on TV?
No, I was actually, we just got back from a date night with my wife. And I looked at my phone, and a handful of my former Vandy teammates said, are you watching? Are you watching? Are you watching? I was like, what do you mean? Look at it. And I was like, oh, my God. Yes, keep going. Keep your foot on their necks. And how we were converting and scoring and stopping was just everything. And I was like, wow, we're beating them. They're not losing the game. We are beating them. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, every
Loved
time they answered, Vandy would answer, and like, all right, we're not running scared. We're like
toe to toe in the ring, which is what I love to see when it's like too many times. And I feel like this is the adage, with at least with young players. It definitely happens with college players. It doesn't necessarily. I've had it happen one instance with Tom Brady in New England, but some guys fall victim to the pedigree before we even put on pads.
Yeah.
Right? And I just can't do it. And I'm just like, please come out here and fight with me, because at the end of the day, this man has to show and prove to the world why you don't deserve to be here. And honestly, after what I've seen from you, from all the training we've done, that's not going to happen. I have faith in you. We can go out here and win. I need you to have that same faith. And too many times, at least in college, the big name programs, the pedigree, prestige, psychs a lot of people and coaches out.
Yeah.
Most of that, it gets weeded out by the time you get to the league. But every once in a while, you run across a dynasty. Now it's Mahomes and Kansas City. Back then, it was New England and the Patriots.
Yeah.
And you go against them, you hear it in your coach's voice, like, oh, let's just try. Instead of let's go out there and dominate.
Right, exactly. And then, look, we go to the courts, and we get a JUCO ruling that Diego Pavia gets another year. I mean, that's a game changer, right?
It is. It's a huge game changer for Vanderbilt, personally speaking, because I want another year of that, right? When you have someone like that, it brings in the pedigree of players that you can start to have long-term success with, because they truly start to see the best of both worlds. I can take down the best and have an amazing degree at the end of it if I choose to flush out that degree. And I'm in an amazing city like Nashville. Also, the implications long-term in regards to JUCO years not counting towards your eligibility has crazy ripple effects. And I'm excited to see what the league looks like in about 4 to 6 years, when the average player coming in is no longer 22 but 24.
Yeah.
Because most kids will be taking JUCO because it doesn't count, so they can get bigger, faster, and stronger, then go into their university.
Yeah.
And then not many guys are going to go one and done after that, or two and done. So you'll see kids that are like going 3, maybe even 4 years at a 4-year institution after JUCO. Your rookies are coming in younger.
Yeah.
Right? Which may help long term, because a lot of guys want more developed guys in the league. So we'll see what it plays out.
Hopefully we're over the COVID. I heard somebody, they're like, oh, he has a COVID year. I'm like, how do you still have a COVID year? It's 2025. Who still has COVID years?
No.
It's insane. Talking with Stephen Weatherly, take me back to your college days. You played. Were you all Derek Mason?
No, so I committed to Bobby Johnson.
Bobby Johnson. Wow.
Yeah, and then he left, and Franklin came in, and he reoffered me when I was in high school.
Okay.
And so so I committed to Vandy when Vandy really wasn't it.
Wow, yeah.
So it was the best education I had available. And to me personally, I wanted to beat up on Georgia. I wanted to beat the best. I wanted to show the world that I am capable of doing it. wherever, and while getting a good education. So, like, that's why I wanted to go there to Bobby Johnson. And Franklin came in and brought in the recruits he brought in, and we beat Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee in the same year, won, and he took his talents to Penn State, and then I had Mason.
And then, Mason. Yeah, I mean, look, Franklin had an amazing run, and, I mean, if he could have stayed at Vandy, it's amazing.
The next year was so weak, we could have punctured a hole through the SEC, and we would have been Missouri. Well, granted, we lost to Missouri when they went to the SEC championship. Like, that could have wrong black and gold team.
Yeah, it's rough. But you guys, I mean, so my good buddy Earl Bennett, he's back at Vandy now doing some things and helping out.
Right.
And then I see Jordan Rogers is like one of the faces of the SEC network now. I mean, the Vandy guys y'all are coming out, man. It's making a name for yourselves.
Yeah, I think it's important for the world to see what the Vandy guys are doing, especially in the space, to know that, like, this is what it looks like to go in, do your time, make the most of it, have a lot of fun, and then come back and then make an impact in the area that helped form you the most.
Yeah.
And so I know there's a lot of guys, the alumni group chat is crazy about going up there, doing workouts, and just when I was there, we had the opportunity to work out with a handful of pro guys who were just working out in the city. And I know how formative that was for me, learning that work ethic, learning that grind, seeing what the next step looks like. There was no coach out there pushing him, but he was running full speed sprints, doing routes. Old tight end Bennett. And so, like, just seeing that work ethic really set the standard for what I believed it would take to make it to that next level. So we like to do that for young guys.
It is crazy. I talked to Jordan Rogers. He's like, even Nashville is changed since he was there. Like, it's insane. Like, you go downtown, like, I mean, there's so many bars and restaurants and live entertainment now. It's like, it's maybe a good thing that wasn't going on when you were there at this level.
Distractions.
Yeah.
Nothing but distractions. I could not imagine what it's like to live in a big city. I was stuck in the Vandy bubble. I didn't have a car, and I didn't feel like walking all the way to Broadway. This was before Uber and Lyft, too, and taxis were expensive. So it was easy for me to not indulge in the surrounding Nashville community. But now, yeah, I'm surprised that they don't get way more recruits just by advertising the Nashville living.
Yeah,
and so
why not?
But turning this year, and especially next year after another successful year of winning, I think that's very much going to be their staple, their bread and butter.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I think Vandy's the biggest wild card this year because you don't know can Clark-Lee take that next step? But now you can't sneak up on anybody, though. People know.
As it should be. Hey, we are here. I've always knocked on the front door. I've never tried to sneak in the back. I'm like, I'm here to do battle. I'm here to compete against you. And so, I will be fair. A lot of people did sleep, did not take serious, was prepping. But now you know to bring your A game. So when we beat you, now that you're aware, that just shows that the first time was not a fluke.
Yeah.
And now people talking about you reckless 2 years in a row. So.
Yep, absolutely. No, it's going to be so fun to see what they do. Before we let you go, let everybody know what you got going on here this week.
Yeah. So I came out here to plug my foundation. I started in 2020 when I was with the Panthers. We're all about teaching kids and giving them the tools, skills, and traits to be successful adults. And so we have reading programs for elementary school kids. We give out free math and science courses to middle schoolers. And for K through 12, we teach kids how to be artists, and when they get older, how to build a portfolio and live life as an artist so they can feel empowered to go do that. And then the second thing I just got into, I just got my knee replaced back in September. Now that I'm healed from that, I'm trying to get into coaching.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I feel like there's a mindset out here that you can use to bring the best out of you that is positive and healthy. It's about competition. It's not about challenging manhood or anything like that. It's about having pride in what you do and how you show up every day, and that being enough for you to come out here and try your hardest. Yeah. And so using that as like a basis, I just want to help young athletes get to where they want to be as older athletes. So I started applying for coaching jobs in the pros. I want to be like a special teams coach.
Okay.
Yeah, I love core teams. They're thankless, and I love it.
You don't want to do like quality control though, right?
Yeah, so that's where you start.
Okay,
there's this
thing. That's where you got to start, I guess.
Yeah, but holding the cards, I remember distinctly those cool coaches when I was on practice squad my rookie year.
Yeah.
And those were the coaches that really made the dog days tough, and they really leaned on you and like gave you really good pointers. And so I want to be that because that coach helped me get to my eventual starting position and signing with a new squad, being the starter and all that stuff. So I know those little moments, keeping you grounded, keeping your head locked in. I want to be that for a guy.
Well, let me tell you this real quick. A few years back, D'Amico Ryans, he had just hung it up his playing career. I think he finished with the Eagles. He came back. He was doing. He signed on to do radio hits with us that season. He was coming in studio once a week, breaking everything down. At the end of that season, he tells us, I just got to go. I got this itch. I got to go try my itch at coaching. I just got to go see. Just going to go see. My buddy's with the 49ers. I'm going to go over there and try. And I think he started quality control, moved up, becomes one of the best defense coordinators in the league, and now incredible head coach 2 years in as a head coach. So that's where it starts, man. I mean, you plant the seed, and then this thing grows very quickly.
And it's about passion and having a desire and having, honestly, after speaking to a handful of coaches out there, having a non-ego-driven mission or passion really helps, especially when you make it about the growth and development of someone else, especially the players. I see those coaches lasting long and having decade-long careers.
Yeah.
And other coaches that want to do it for their own pedigree or to put a feather in their cap or to round off an amazing football legacy in some degree. Those coaches, they make an impact, but they don't have that long-lasting impact. I don't hear guys years later talking about this particular coach the way they did other coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen Weatherly, best of luck to you, man. We appreciate you coming by, and, man, we'll see you down the road, all right?
Absolutely.
All right, thanks again to Stephen Weatherly for joining us, and again, does a great job of talking some football with us, and he's excited, more excited than anybody about Vanderbilt and what could happen with them as we look ahead to 2025. By the way, Vanderbilt will open the season home against Charleston Southern, so they get a little bit of a warm-up, then they're on the road at Virginia Tech. Remember, they beat them last year in the overtime game. Was kind of the big shocker in week 1. Now they got a return trip. They got to go to Virginia Tech. And then week 3, it's at South Carolina already, right out of the gates. Lenora Sellers, Dylan Stewart, all those big players they're going to have to worry about. They come home for a return game against Georgia State, who beat them last year, by the way. Then it's home for Utah State. So look, if Vanderbilt can find a way to win that Virginia Tech game and then potentially find a way, can they compete? If they pull off an upset of South Carolina, man, you are talking about a team that could start very well 5-0. Again, it would have to be a big upset against South Carolina because a lot of people are thinking that they are going to be very good this year. But then October 4th, it's that revenge game for Alabama where they get Vandy in Tuscaloosa, who obviously that was one of Vanderbilt's big resume wins last year. Obviously, we voted our best SEC game of the year last year. And then they're home against LSU, home against Mizzou. They're at Texas. And they finish the season home against Auburn, home against Kentucky, and at Tennessee. Look, it's a tough schedule. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of pitfalls in there, but 6-6, is it in play? Again, there's a world where they can start 4-2, and then you're looking at, okay, we just need 2 more wins the rest of the way. Can we get there? I think they can. I think they can do it again next year with Diego Pavia back in the fold, but we shall see. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. We still have some more guests that we caught from Radio Row in New Orleans that we'll bring you throughout this week, including Adam Brenneman, Dylan Stewart, big South Carolina defensive end, Sean Alexander, the Alabama running back legend. Also some great conversations with former LSU D lineman Michael Brockers, Mark Herzlich from the ACC Network, Kevin Austin, former Notre Dame wide receiver, who we talked to about Brian Kelly. So we'll bring you all that conversation later this week right here on Locked On SEC. But you guys have a great day. Check out Zach with Locked On Auburn for your second listen. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.